And can you see me too, or just my screen?
I can see you too.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you could just see the screen. I was hoping you could just see the screen, but that's fine. All right, Tom. Okay, we can see that we have four people here in addition to us right now. So we're just going to wait a couple more minutes. Chris, I have a question. When I record this, is it going to record all the things I have on my screen, or is it just going to record? What's it going to record?
It should just record the main screen action, so either the screen share or the video.
Okay.
And the audio, obviously.
So not all the little windows I see on my screen.
No.
Okay. How are you, Jody? Oh, wait, you're muted.
I'm good. I actually was just going onto our Facebook page and doing a little post that it's happening now.
Oh, good.
It's probably best to keep me muted because at any time there could be someone walking down the street and suddenly there'll be two dogs barking. How about you, Tom? How are things going? It sounds like things are quite busy.
I have workmen working upstairs, and it's very loud, so I've shut the door, but hopefully it'll be okay. But I locked the cat in, and she wasn't happy, so I just let her out. All right, well, maybe we should just get started and let people join as they join. I think that that's probably a good idea. Oh, Chris, it says I need to request you to record it, not me, unfortunately. Sorry.
Okay, I'm already recording. You're good.
Okay. All right. Alan, right? We cannot hear you. I see your question there. We can't hear you, unfortunately. That's one of the things here. But so if you're joining us, Alan, Dominic, Jason, and Pamela, please feel free to click open the Q&A button and ask your question in that box, and then I will relay it to Tom as we're going along. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to our February webinar. We're just under the wire a little bit. I'd like to introduce Tom Hall, who you can see there in the glasses. He is the executive director of the Montclair Film, I think that's your title, right? Executive director of the Montclair Film Festival. And today he's going to be giving us, sharing his wide expertise on wrangling the line and what all the things mean: rush tickets, wait lists, standby, all those kind of things, which are kind of interchangeable, but maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. So again, you can't ask questions with your microphone, but feel free to use the Q&A window to chime in, and I'll try to find a good time to jump in and ask the question as we go along. But we had a really successful art house convergence where we all kind of got together before Sundance in Utah, and we covered a lot of topics. I know that Alan, you were there. I'm not sure if the other three were with us in Utah. So we wanted to be able to continue these conversations because we had some really good roundtable discussions about some of the issues that are kind of most pressing and most benefit from shared conversations and information with each other, that we could really learn from each other. And so we had some roundtables and they were great, but we wanted to kind of keep them going. And so we figured that Tom's was a good one to start with because a lot of festivals are coming up in the next few months, which we realized a lot of us overlap. And we wanted to make sure we get this one in under the wire. So welcome. And Tom, do you want to start? Take it away. Jody, did you want to say anything else? Sorry. Okay.
Hey, can everyone hear me? I'm on a headset microphone. I just want to make sure. Okay, I'm seeing nods. Great. Kristen, if you want to advance the slide really quick.
Yeah.
So this panel is about waitlisting and ticket management for your patrons at your film festival. So when we did this panel in Utah this past January, it was a sort of interesting conversation because half of our panel worked on a festival that did 0 ticketing and all passes, and the other half of the panel worked on a highly ticketed scenario. So that led us to a really important initial conversation, which is defining what type of film festival you're going to be. And I think there are really 2 main ways to do that. One is, well, 3. One would be to make everything free, which is actually a model that exists at AFI Fest in Los Angeles, where their sponsor underwrites the entire ticket package and they give away all their tickets. And they have their own problems with access because when you give your tickets away for free, a lot of people don't value them and don't show up for movies. I think that's relatively unrealistic for most of us. The second way is sort of that Telluride model that I mentioned earlier, which is they're in a very unique position in that they don't announce their films and prior to the festival. People buy passes months in advance for the privilege of being there, and then when they get there, they figure out what they're going to see, and so they spend a lot of time scheduling when they arrive, not knowing what films they're going to see, and they have at that festival a real problem with people who buy very expensive passes and fly from all over the country and the world to be at the event, not getting into films because of the limited capacity of their theaters versus the fact that nothing is held in advance. So they seat their pass holders, and then pass holders want to know very quickly whether or not they will be able to see a film. And if they can't, or they're not going to make it, Telluride has an elaborate system for letting them know their chances of getting into a movie so that they can make it across town to get to the next film and get online and try and make it into another movie. So one of the questions that festival had initially was, how do we make this a better experience for our patrons who are being shut out of movies and spending a lot of money, which I think is also a very unique problem for a lot of film festivals because most of the rest of us ticket our events. So I think the first question that you have to ask yourself when you're setting up your festival's ticketing policy is, who are your patrons? What kind of experience do they want? Do you have an audience of people who are dedicated film goers? Do you have a group of people who are there for the parties and you give them a lot of tickets as sponsors and they don't really use them? What kind of experience are you setting up for people? Do you have people who don't buy in advance and you do a lot of walk-up business? Do you do a lot of online sales so that people know and do a lot of online scheduling? Or do you have people who are, I ran a festival in Sarasota, Florida that was like 80% walk-up ticket sales. People would come in person because they weren't really computer savvy and felt overwhelmed by the online ticketing system. So we built policies and practices around their experience. So I think you need to invest where your patrons are and go with what they know. That's a first decision that I think is really, really important. And then what will best serve you from a revenue perspective? For me, that's constantly been really careful management of multiple platforms for ticketing. So we have everything from an all-access pass that sells for $1,000 down to matinee pricing, student pricing, rush line ticketing, or standby line ticketing, which we'll get into in depth in a few minutes, all of which is every empty seat in the theater is a lost opportunity to make money and to make a filmmaker feel like they've got a full house. So some people are blessed with selling out all of their films. Others of us have to do a lot of partnering and scrambling to do full theaters for every movie. It just really depends on how, again, you're structured within your community. But really, a combination of pass sales and ticketing sales seems to be, for my experience anyway, the way most of us do it. Again, there are others who don't do it that way, but I think just as a standard rule, you want to set it up that way. So how do you then determine tickets versus passes? How many you have theaters that have multiple capacities. You want to make sure you're scheduling your most popular movies in your biggest theaters when you can. How many passes can you sell? How many tickets do you need to print? How many do you hold? How many do you oversell if you decide to oversell, assuming you're going to have some attrition? These are all important questions that we're going to deal with in this webinar. And then also, if you end up doing a pass and ticketing system, I think the two main questions are, of course, do you allow pass holders into the theaters first, which we do at our festivals as a benefit for making the investment in the festival. Those people get first access to seats. And then do you force your pass holders to have tickets? So do they just walk into stuff, or do you actually integrate them into your ticketing process? We also do that because carefully managing our ticket inventory is very, very important to our financial success. The more we can sell, the better off we're going to be from a revenue perspective. So the rules that we set up with all of our sponsors, all of our patrons who are pass holders, our filmmakers who get passes, are very clear to them so that they know what it means when you have a pass and a ticket to come to the films. If you're not there 15 minutes prior to the beginning of the screening, you're not guaranteed a seat, is an example. Let them know that if you have tiered passes, like all access passes sit first, second level passes sit second, ticket holders sit next, the rush line or standby line sits last, et cetera, et cetera. It's important to have those rules clearly established and for your volunteers and theater managers to be fluent in them so that the experience is the same, it's consistent, everyone knows the rules and doesn't feel hard done by, that there's no sense of things being arbitrary, things seem organized. That's really, really crucial when you're going to a festival. Unlike going to the movies, festival audiences wait in line 10 times longer than they ever would when they go to a film. They just go buy a ticket and walk into the movies. That's a traditional film going experience. So we're asking them to arrive early, we're asking them to wait. It's very important that they understand how it works and why it's organized that way. Okay, Christine, can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So there are no hard and fast rules for how many tickets to hold and how many tickets to sell. There are some decisions that you need to make based on what you know about your own organization. I'm going to give you some examples of these based on these 4 points of how we at our festival do this decision-making timeline. But that's based on experience of our audiences. And also I would encourage people to, if you're initiating a pass, sales, and hold scenario, that you start off conservative, which means you would hold more than you probably will end up needing, and then utilize your standby line, which will help initiate your standby line in a meaningful way, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So first, the question is, how many seats do you need to keep in your ticket inventory? That means how many do you not put on sale per screening? So we use a number based on the capacity of the theater versus the number of passes that allow you ticketless access. When I worked at the Sarasota Film Festival for the last 10 years, we sold only 30 of our all-access passes. So that generated $30,000 in revenue for us. And those people got to sit without a ticket. They never went to the same movie, except when they did. We never knew what they were going to see. We didn't know how they were going to determine their day or their schedule, how they would use that pass. And that was their freedom to do whatever they wanted. So did we hold 30 seats for every film? Absolutely not. What we decided to do based on what we studied from their attendance was that we sell, depending on in our largest theater, we would always put our most popular films. We would keep 10% of the house, which is about 25 seats for that film. And we would generally, our pass holders, our all access pass holders would utilize those seats. So in the end, we had about a 10%, a 90% utilization of the pass, which led to about 10% of the room that we were putting our biggest movies in. Other films, we kept 5% of the room dedicated to our all-access badge holders. That just seemed to be a number that worked for us. So those theaters were smaller. They were 120 seats. So we would put 6 6 to 8 seats on hold just for the badge holders. The other question is, do you allow, for example, press, industry, artists to sit without tickets? If you do that, you're going to want to adjust your percentages accordingly, and set a number, again, that seems reasonable based on the number of people that'll be there. So, for example, with artist badges, we look at the guest services schedule to determine how many filmmakers will be in town on any given day, and then determine, when we are putting aside holds for tickets, how many we expect to attend. Films, some people just want to come check their email and have a drink at the lounge. Some people want to really hit the movies and take the opportunity to see other films. Some people are just worried about their own screening and don't care about anything else. So we're very, very aggressive with holds for artist badges. That number goes into our inventory as a hold as well. And then press, we would recruit national press to attend. We'd have local press that was very eager to attend the films. But we ticketed our press. So they would make last minute decisions on what they wanted to see. So we would have press holds that would go to the day of, and based on the number of press attending, we would make that number again very, very small. So it'd be, maybe 2-3 tickets per biggest movies set aside for press. Sometimes it was 10 if people put in requests early. So you can set up a process with your press office that makes sense for the number there. And then keep those holds religiously. Don't flex people in like, oh, Steve's brother really wants to go. Can he get to? I know it's sold out, but I have a friend who really needs to get in, or a volunteer who really has done so much for us. Should we give him a seat to it? If you need those seats, keep them. And utilize your standby line if they're not filled. And we'll talk about that again in a minute. So you see it below, determine percentages versus per screening holds. Like I said, I think conservatively 10 to 15% of your house being held if you're doing all access passes. If you're ticketing everybody, including press, put aside 5% of the house for day of decision makers, and give them the opportunity to make a day of decision. If you have people on all access badges, or on non-ticketed access like filmmakers, another 2 to 3% of the house. So maybe 7 to 8% cap if you're not having all access badges. Inventory is driven by pass access. Again, what I just said. There is, set your inventory before the festival when you're putting tickets on sale. Make sure that these numbers are solid. Don't do it in flux after things go on sale and sell out the first day. That's really the idea. And then some people oversell their theaters by 5 to 10% as well. So knowing that some people won't make it, it depends. I think this number of oversales really depends on how many sponsor tickets you're giving away. Here in Montclair, I walked into a situation where we had a very aggressive sponsor ticket operation going on, where we were giving away a lot of tickets to sponsors to give to their patrons, and people would get them and not use them, and their reserve seating and all of this stuff. We're revising that process now because it doesn't allow us to sell to capacity. And there would be sold out shows with lots of empty seats because people didn't utilize the rush line and they didn't utilize their tickets. So we're reassessing that here in my first year. I'm not comfortable overselling by very much, maybe 5% of the house. But in a lot of festivals, people who have bought tickets really are your aggressive film goers. They're the people who want to be there. Your attrition levels may be low depending on your sponsor levels. So, look at what you're comping versus what you're selling. If sales make up a large portion of your number, don't oversell by much. If comps make up a large number, you're going to be comfortable overselling tickets because a lot of those comps just are not going to show up. So I would use that factor to determine how much you oversell by. We heard on the panel at Art House Conversions, some people oversell up to 10%, which I think is very high. But again, if they're comping everybody in the room, that's probably just fine.
Tom, are there other factors? Can you hold your mic up a little? Is there a way to?
Sure. I'm sorry. I'm a low talker.
No, it's just that there's other outside noise. But
oh yeah,
it's okay. Are there other factors that you bring into it? Like, I mean, maybe we'll talk about this with Rushline, but like, does weather play a factor ever? Or do things like that, do you think about like, well, probably people aren't going to come because it's crappy or whatever, you know?
So these decisions are all made. I mean, I don't consult the Farmer's Almanac to know a month in advance when
Right. So these
when
are
our tickets go on sale.
earlier. Yeah,
So
Right.
all of these decisions are made super early in the process. That said, you know, doing a release of holds, you know, part of the process is releasing holds as you go. So if it's a blizzard outside and you've got a big chunk of tickets held back, you're probably not going to get a lot of walk-ups anyway, but you know, releasing them may not be the worst thing.
Mhm.
But the release of holds, you know, I always find that to be really problematic, and the reason why is because you have dedicated film-loving people who show up on the first day of the film festival and are finding films sold out, and then 3 weeks later you decide to release 10 tickets to the film after they've already bought an alternative, when their first choice was to see the movie that was previously not for sale. So I think that's really frustrating for people when you could have gone to your number one choice and you end up at your number two choice, and suddenly Joe Schmo, who didn't take the time to be there for you at the beginning, gets in without you having a chance. And you know, we have a no refund policy as well, so that also stinks for them. So I try to get this all done at the beginning, so that early ticket buyers are given privilege and benefit of buying early. They're your most loyal, dedicated customers. They should be the ones to get the reward, in my opinion. I wish I could mute this mic when I wasn't talking, but I know I have a loud office, so I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. That's better actually.
Okay, good.
The next slide you want? Or?
Yeah, sure. Right. So I just said it 4 times and I shouldn't have, but the phrase sold out is something that we never use at our festival. So every film that has no advance tickets available is standby only and not sold out. Sold out implies to people, even though they may know you have a standby line, that the movie has no tickets. That is never the case. The movie should always have some day of tickets available to the standby line based on the way the house is seated. So we say standby only for everything. We never ever, it's nice for like the filmmaker to say, I sold out my movie, but no one else wants to hear that. You really want people to come and utilize the standby line at the festival. So in your language for when you're announcing your films and the status of your box office, I would encourage everyone never to use the phrase sold out. You can tell the filmmaker in an email like, hey, your screening sold out. But for the public and anyone buying a ticket, using a pass or a badge, standby only or rush only, depending on if you use the phrase rush line, but standby only is really.
Are those interchangeable to you? I mean, standby and
so
rush.
They are not interchangeable to the Film Society of Lincoln Center, and this also came up in our conversation with them at the Art House Convergence. For them, the rush line is student rush, so they sell tickets for students. They have a thing called a student rush. We call our line a standby line. And their standby line was the same as everybody else who uses that phrase, which is get in line, and if there are any seats, we'll sell them to you. You stand by for seating. I see someone just posted something about not even using that phrase, but I can't see what they said. Let me look at the chat. Sorry.
Oh, wait. Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry. Oh,
yeah, line C, right. So someone else has line C. They use the phrase line C. Anything you can do to make it seem like it's a strong possibility that people will get seated, that's a really good idea. So anything you can make it seem like people will get seats is really, really important. So not using those phrases that make people think they're not going to get in.
So someone on the Jason Purdue just chimed in too. They say on rush is
right.
So I mean, at Tribeca we said rush tickets only. So you could also say, you know, advance tickets are sold out, but will be tickets day of. However you word your language, just make sure it's clear. Yeah.
Right. So what that does is encourage people not to double book to buy tickets to something they don't want, and try to utilize the standby line or the rush line. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I had to be fair, I looked up today how standby was sold, whether it's 2 words or 1 word, and the usage was 1 word, but I don't know how everyone else uses it. So use it as 2 words.
I was not going to complain about your spelling. You did a great job.
Okay. I looked it up, honestly, because I was like, I don't know how you spell it. Okay, here we go.
So yeah, here's these are sort of some best practices if you can implement them. that we found to be effective in creating a useful standby experience. But I think the next slide is like the most useful thing. But let's talk about these. So the numbered queue, if anyone went to Sundance, they made an app just for that, which is putting together a numerical sequence for people so that they know their number in line. They were able to not arrive until the time that was designated on the app. I think it was like 15 minutes before. They were to get into sequential order based on their app number, and then they sat the right number of people based on what was available. And often that was in the multiple dozens because they have huge venues there. Other people hand out.
You're talking about the wait list, right? The number queue for the wait list.
Right. So the wait list at Sundance, the wait list is the rush line or the standby line. So they call it a wait list. I don't think, again, just depends on what you call it.
Right. I'm just making sure you weren't saying like a numbered queue for the ticket holders. You're saying for the.
No. Yeah. Right. Ticket holders. Yeah. No. Ticket holders go into the cattle fencing and wait for their chance to go into the theater.
Right.
The thing that we've implemented would be, and I'll talk a little bit about this a little below, but we would create a numbered system, give people a number, and they could walk away. I really want to see the 4 o'clock show. They come at 3. We give them number 1. Let's say they were the first person, and they could go away until 3:45. Then we'd reassemble them in line as well. We didn't have an app, which I would love, but it seems a little prohibitive cost and implementation-wise for our venues to implement that. However, if there was a solution that you had to give out numbers, that would be great. Telluride has their own queue system that does the similar thing. They use electronic billboards and all kinds of other very elaborate systems, which I think is really effective. But again, we have not made an investment in that at our regional festival level. We just use like number cards that we print out and hand out. Do you print individual go ahead. Yes, we print individual disposable number cards for people. So we have stacks and stacks of 1 through 20s, 1 through 50s. And then they turn them back in when they get back in line. So we keep them, but we have enough for 5 or 6 times a day. You turn your number back in when you pay for your ticket, your rush ticket. And then at the end of the process, we ask everyone to turn them back in. Sometimes they don't. So we create multiple stacks of cards, and they're just pieces of paper. You can laminate them if you want.
Someone could theoretically use it, come back the next meeting.
So we color code them. We didn't have them all the same color. So yeah, and then the other alternative there is to do a combination of that and a wait list, or to create a wait list, which is having people sign in the order they arrive and then leave, and then not have. You could call them up based on their availability. This takes a lot more time. I think turning over tickets quickly when you want to sell people into the theaters, you're going to take 15 people and you don't want to go, Diane, are you here? Diane, so some sort of system where you give someone a number, and then they sign up on a wait list. Was another alternative way of doing this. Waitlisting itself, like just creating a wait list electronically through ticketing systems, was a possibility, where you asked online when you made a ticket purchase. If a show had no advance tickets, you could electronically waitlist for the show, like they do at Sundance, but without a number. So you were the third person to try to buy tickets, so you were number 3. That's another opportunity. Our ticketing system does not seem to do that, but other people have talked about having that happen. We always set up rows of chairs instead of making people stand forever. One nice thing is we had a little area next to our theaters, so we set up 4 by 10, like 40 chairs. We had people would sit and read books. They'd wait. It didn't feel like a line. It felt like a waiting area, so they were given a number, and then they could just hang out and wait. We had a tent over the top of the chair, so there was shelter from the weather. People weren't in the blazing sun or the freezing cold or the rain, so that they weren't waiting in line outdoors exposed to the elements. I think that's also, this picture I'm looking at from Tribeca seems to undermine that concept, but they have a lot of people on that line compared to what we had. So really just depending on the scope of what you can do, the more intimate and homey you can make it, people will be more inclined to visit and stay and not feel like their feet are going to fall off because they're waiting forever to get a ticket. It also encouraged the lines to start a lot earlier. because they had a place to sit and wait. So if you wanted to cut down on the time you had people hovering and asking questions about if they're going to get in or not, that's another thing. You may want to make it a little less hospitable, but ultimately I think our audiences tended to be older. Standing for a long period of time was not great for them, so we really wanted to make it comfortable.
Did you start, like I think at Tribeca we used to say lines will form 45 minutes ahead of time. I mean, you didn't let them start 2 hours ahead of time, right? I mean, or do you?
Just because of the volume of people, it was not a big volume, and we did have a place for people to hang out and to talk and meet each other, that it became more of a hangout space for people sometimes while they were waiting, and they would come early. We didn't set a hard time to start the rush line because then you have everyone running up there at the same time, which is weird. So we would, we didn't put a cap on the amount of time you could wait. If someone really wanted to go to the 7 o'clock show and they showed up at noon and like that was so important to them, then we would let them sit and hang out for 7 hours. It didn't happen very often, but if it did, I didn't want to discourage them from doing what they felt was necessary to get in. We've already created resentment for them not getting an advance ticket, so I was trying to do as much as we can to make them feel welcome, and like they're going to wait it out, that's fine. Sometimes our volunteers would even share like the volunteer pizza with people. It was very nice. I mean, ended up being a pretty good system. So
one thing that we did at Tribeca too is that we had sometimes we work with sponsors to entertain basically the line, or make them happy. And so there was one year we had, I think it was Conrad Hotel, there was a concierge service they were trying to promote. And so you could tweet at Conrad and say, I need an umbrella, I'm in the rush line at Chelsea. And they would had a Cadillac van, whatever it was, that was our other sponsor, would run up and bring them an umbrella or bring them food or whatever. It was kind of fun. That was 1 year. It was really
That's
cool.
really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't afford that.
No, I know, but I did.
But that would be great. The other thing to say about people having buskers, entertain a line. So having musicians or magicians.
You're cutting out a little bit, Tom. Is it just Tom or is it me?
Or something fun.
Wait, is it Jody? Can you tell me if it's?
It's just Tom. You're
entertain them. I don't know how effective that is. Yeah.
Tom, can you hear us?
I think we've been having network problems. Yeah, I can hear you.
You're cutting
it's
out.
On my end. Hold on. Yeah, I should be good again. Am I okay?
I think it's better again. Yeah. Except for that you're stuck. Your video.
Sorry.
Oh, there.
Our network is a little funky.
I think you're back.
Okay, sorry about that. We have a funky internet connection here sometimes.
Okay.
So the other thing that came up that I thought was fun to mention is volunteers. Having the right type of person handle this line is really important. One of the things we found, because we had older audiences, young people on the rush line or on the standby line as volunteers was really, really effective. Smiling, happy, younger people who didn't make it seem like it was a chore or you were being punished, but understood your plight and had a big smile on their face and were making it a more fun experience, if that's even possible, was very, very helpful in terms of the psychology of people waiting on the rush line. Mm-hmm. I had an experience at a regional festival this year where I was a ticket holder at the end of the ticket holder line, and we were going to get shut out of the screening that we had bought tickets to, and we were basically yelled at and told that that's how it works at film festivals. Sorry that you're not going to get a seat, which having run film festivals for 13, I didn't chime in because I knew that person was delivering a message they were told to deliver. But, that's not, you don't want a grumpy, angry person yelling at your ticket buyers and your rush line people. And people will be disappointed when they don't get in, if some of them don't. So having someone who can empathize and smile, we always find younger people tend to be better at that on our end, just because our audiences were older. And so they would have a hard time being angrier at a younger person who was a volunteer than a paid older staff person. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing to say here is, do you take cash only? Do you have Square or some other solution that you're using on an iPad or a phone, or you have a swipe system set up to take credit? We were cash only for many years. We implemented a credit card system the last year, and that increased our sales for some reason. So if you are cash only, just make sure you have change for everybody. and you're stocked up with enough cash, I would encourage you to take credit if you can, just depending on looking at this rush ticket line for Tribeca in the picture. I'm assuming Tribeca has like swipers that are connected to a network somewhere, and they've Wi-Fi'd up their outdoor of their theater. Not everyone can afford to do that, so just make sure you have the infrastructure in place for payment, depending on what you do. And try and go as quickly as possible, and also announce early and often what it's looking like in the theater for your line. So like, it's looking like, you're all going to get in and then half the line doesn't get in is never a message you want to deliver. So be judicious in what you're doing. Sorry, everyone's yelling. That's okay. So yeah, that would be really, a thing I would do is, don't overpromise and underdeliver on the rush line.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was one thing at Tribeca when they had a rush line for downtown for the big premieres, the red carpet premieres at TPAC. They would it was the rush tickets were half price,
right?
Cash only,
right?
So it was like
it goes really fast.
It was kind of off the beaten path, so they were trying to attract a rush lines. They were half price, but it was cash only to make it quick and get them in there. Right,
and then everyone shows up with 20s. And the show costs $10. So that's always,
right,
something to think about. Okay.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Hold on, I'm getting there.
No, that's okay.
If I can.
Great. So, another thing to talk about here is, of course, the cascade of people that are getting into the movie theater and how this works. So again, we talked earlier about having a clear set of timing and priority for your ticket holders and your pass holders so that they know when they're supposed to be there and when they sit. And the same thing goes for your standby line. So in the case of my festivals that I've run, pass holders sit first, ticket holders sit at 15 minutes. People are going to the bathroom, they're getting up, they're buying popcorn. At 5 minutes till, we start selling to the rush line. Someone's like, we do a hard seat count with our our theater manager, who counts empty seats and then radios to our rush line how many that they can sell, and we do it in stages. So let's say there are 20 open seats, we will sell 10, and then those people will come down the hall. Other people will return from the bathroom. Other people will return with their popcorn. We realize that now instead of having 10 remaining, we only have 5 remaining. Then we sell the 5. So that goes right up until the announcements to start the film. I'm a stickler for starting on time because people have films to go to after your film ends, and you want to keep a tight schedule. So we will introduce movies and get them started. We have 2 or 3 minutes of pre-show as well. We'll get them started while we seat the final rush line patrons. So just having a timeline that your theater managers are comfortable with and your rush line people and your box office are comfortable with is very, very important. And sticking to it and not arbitrarily not sticking to it. Again, anything you can do to create a consistent experience for everybody is the best thing.
And I think that starting on time is an ideal for sure, but I think that there are some festivals where people start to realize what the deal is, and like everything's kind of consistent, even if it's consistently 10 minutes late or consistently on time.
Right. I really schedule tightly. I guess it depends on your schedule. Like if you have 10 minutes, when I build my program, because I'm trying to fit in as many movies as I can, I try not to have that extra time.
Right.
So it's important that we start and end on time.
But if you're a smaller festival that has
one, you can get away with it, right?
It doesn't
Absolutely.
Really. Right.
Yeah. This isn't really on the agenda, but I think patrons really prefer that you do your best to get it going. Especially if you have a bunch of ads and a bunch of pre-show and announcements and blah blah blah
and
intros and all that. If you can get that stuff going and get it out of the way, even if it's a couple minutes late, I think it's the best thing. But the whole point being, the front of house people out by your standby line, out by your ticket holder line, and all the people in the theaters who are seating people and getting everything in, you need to have clear, consistent communication and have a protocol for those people. So we had radios and walkie-talkies between the theater and the rush line, and that channel was cleared just for ticketing announcements and seating announcements. So it wasn't people goofing off on the walkie-talkie or talking to each other about other stuff, or we had a channel dedicated specifically to line management, and it was very, very important that it was professional, and it always was. So And everyone knew, the people at the front of house knew what time they were going to let people in. They would stagger seating so that people had a comfortable entry into the theater. We would schedule it right up to the wire with the rush line count and getting people in. We'd start the show. People were straggling in. No one would really end up missing much of the movie, but we'd get going on time. We had a very long walk between our rush line and our theater as another thing. So taking that time into account also is very helpful. Knowing that it's going to take people 5 minutes getting people in on time.
Right.
I really wish I had 1 second so I could stand up and tell everyone in this office to be quiet. They're having like 5 meetings, but I cannot. Golden rule. The golden rule of the standby line. So this is, again, one of the most important things if you're going to implement a standby line or a rush line or a line C, as others called it. You have to sell standby tickets for every screening. Even if it's one ticket, there has to be a seat available to the line, or the line is never going to take off and become a useful tool for your patrons. So no matter what you do, if it means setting your inventory so that you're having some tickets available for the standby line because you're worried about it, but conservatively, no matter what you do, you have to have standby tickets that sell for every situation, every film, every event. Standby tickets must be sold so that people who use the line are rewarded for using the line. And that way you will people are reluctant to get in the standby line or to schedule their day around the availability of standby tickets. If you have a 0% success rate or a small success rate for people to use that line, people will stop using that line and you'll go from, a moderate line to a 0 line. It's really, really important that people are allowed to sit. So make sure that you have your, whatever you need to do in your inventory to set that up, do it. If it means rigging it so that you're using the standby line, rig it. But then you'll have so much more success and your revenue will go up dramatically. When I arrived at my festival in Sarasota the first year, we didn't really utilize standby very well and no one used the line. By the time I left 10 years later, we were, dozens of people deep for each screening because people knew they would get in. So make sure that if you're going to go through the trouble of setting up a process for selling standby tickets, that you're selling standby tickets. They have to be.
Is there any reason not to do a standby line?
Yeah, I mean, if you're selling out everything and everybody's showing up and you're like advanced sales only and there's no day of ticketing or pre-show ticketing, yeah. I mean, why bother? If no one's going to use, if you're not going to use it, don't do it. Like if your theaters are full and you're not worried about people getting access, don't do it. Would be my advice, because people are going to get frustrated and there's no reason to frustrate potential patrons. Have a system that works for you. Don't do it if you're not going to use it.
Okay, so there's a question, which I think is actually a really good question. But so Alan was wondering, he said, I know this is a very different subject, but it's related. If there's time, maybe, is there a way to discuss advanced ticket sales and how to drive more of them? Do you have any quick tips?
Ooh, yeah, that could be a whole nother webinar, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe it should be.
I guess if that person wants to write in with a little more detail of specifically what they're looking for, I mean, that's a marketing and social media question. And again, knowing your audience and also how you set up your ticketing sales timeline and structure. I can be happy to give.
I think that's a great idea for a follow-up webinar.
Yeah, I do too.
Meet there, so we should do that.
Yeah. I'm looking at this little Q&A thing too. So questions. Give it to us all. Oh, Josh, okay. Our audience is notoriously day of. Okay, so this is something that we have as well. So whoever, I didn't see, I closed the window, sorry. Whoever mentioned that they do a lot of walk-up business on the day. So I think that's, people buy walk-up tickets because they sell out. They're not sold out. And you have created an event where access on the day is possible. So I don't know what the lead time is when your box office is open. One thing that we found that's been tremendously successful in pre-selling shows is setting up a membership program. So if you have members who have a pre-sale window where they're allowed to buy tickets, before everybody else, and you take care of them and give them a preview to the program and invite them to like a press kickoff event and get them excited about the program. Our members have pre-sold tickets at a really high rate, so that when they go on sale to the public, we end up selling them out to the remaining tickets to the public. The other thing is if you have a lot of sponsors sometimes want a lot of film tickets. And if you combine sponsors and members, you're taking a huge percentage of your available pre-show tickets off the table, which can drive, even with moderate advance sales, films into the sold-out region. The other thing is to track your film programming. Are you putting out movies that people are excited about in advance? Or are people taking a chance on the festival not knowing enough about the movies where they're going to walk up and take a shot on the day? If you have celebrity-driven films, or if you have high-profile documentaries, or you work with community partners who are packing the house for you because you have, their mission is being represented in the films that you're showing, etc. We've had a lot of success with people being excited enough to schedule their time.
And I think there is what you said about social media too. That is a tool. If you can really think about, I don't know how many films you have. I mean, Alan says here his box office opens at least 2 weeks before, and they also sell all access passes and film passes. I mean, I think that if you really focus on individual films, that can help sell tickets. If you share trailers and share information and share obviously anybody any guests who are going to be there and try to drum up interest that way. That's one way to kind of get some momentum rather than just saying the festival, check out our lineup. If you really talk about individual films.
Yeah, and I would say also like the community partnership angle has also been a real successful driver for getting rid of large blocks of tickets for specific movies. So if you have, we have here what they call a niche marketing team that goes out and once the film program is put together, targets groups and organizations that are maybe interested in our films and programs. So building those relationships in the community is really important and helps drive a lot of advanced sales as well.
And if you need to, you can give a discount, like give a 10% discount to someone, to a community, to a partner to use in a newsletter. Say, so-and-so members get 10% off. Buy your tickets today.
Right.
Or advance sales only, like get 10% off if you buy before, within the week or whatever.
And we create ticket codes, and we use Agile as a ticketing system, but we create ticket codes. Yeah, exactly. Josh Leak just said they open 45 days early and tripled their advance sales. We also are open much longer than 2 weeks in advance. We're open a month in advance. But yeah, so anything you can do like to push people into your window, we would have it's a hard balance. Let me just say there's no real great solution for this. Because I'm assuming Josh is probably volunteer-based, but we pay our box office staff. And it's an issue where you don't want to pay someone to sit there all day for days on weekdays where you're not selling tickets and it's trickling in, your numbers go up, but you're spending a lot more money on your box office. You really need to find the right window and the right balance for your town and your community. We found here in Montclair, for example, when I got here, that the vast majority of our tickets are done online. So having a physical box office is less of a priority here. The hours are, weird because it's a commuter town. We just have our own problems. So anything you can do to drive what works for your community and build your system around them is helpful. Yeah, so Josh is also saying he built his headquarters and his ticket sales, his box office in the same place. Which I would probably hang myself if I had to do that here, because as you can hear, this office is a nightmare already, let alone putting a box office in it. But just depends on where you are and how you're set up. We put ours in our lounge during the festival, etc. Okay, Josh is I'm now seeing the Q&A. Do you care if I read it, Kristen, or do you want
to? Go ahead.
Okay, so he's saying, what type of training do you have your volunteers do if it does, quote unquote, sell out? How are you dealing with angry customers that don't make it in? So the first thing I do is when I schedule films, I'm always making sure that they cascade and do not start at a time where people on the rush line can't get a ticket to another movie that they're shut out of a bunch of shows because they waited in the rush line. So when that film starts, let's say it's a 7 p.m., I have a 7:15, a 7:30, and a 7:45 ready to go to give them alternatives immediately that they could buy into. So let's say the 7 o'clock show is a big celebrity-driven film. 7:15 might be a documentary. The 7:30 might be like a smaller independent film. I diversify my hourly blocks and then try to give someone the opportunity, if they're in the rush line and shut out, the chance to buy into other stuff. We don't sell out every film, so those films may have tickets available. They can just walk to the box office and buy a ticket.
So you think about putting the most popular, the one you think is going to be the most popular earlier, and then the less so after that.
So you look at a regular like movie theater schedule. They're doing 15 screenings of one film in a multiplex, right? So every 15 minutes, if you shut out a Spider-Man at 7, 7:15, 7:30, 7:45, you're going to go see Spider-Man. You'll probably get into it, right? So I try to replicate that, but without the same movie. So we put our biggest movies on the big hours because that's when people are traditionally thinking about going to the films. 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Those are you think of a movie, you don't think of like, oh, I'm going to go to the 7:45 or the 8:45. Like you think of on the hours. And I also try and build it around dinner time. So you either can eat before or after and still make it to the movie. So that would be our biggest tentpole. We create a track in our film program during each day that's like, if I want to go do like the biggest, most obvious thing at the film festival that most people are going to be interested in, I make them consecutive so that instead of simultaneous. Sometimes if we have an abundance of great stuff, we'll make it, a very difficult choice. But that's been effective for us. So always give them an opportunity to buy into another film. That really helps. Go ahead, sorry.
No, Alan. So Alan's asking, would you suggest cascading screening times when you're a small fest like they are, where they have 20 features, 3 shorts, and only 7 show features get a second screening? It seems like Fools might be upset that they have fewer opportunities.
Yeah, well, fools are fools for a reason, but yes. So yeah, I would definitely try to do that. I mean, I don't know how many venues you have, and I don't know how close they folks. Oh, not fools. Oh, yeah, okay. Folks also might be upset. Right. Yes. So I would definitely do cascading screening time. It just depends on your venues, where they're located. Next, like if you have one across town and you put a half hour between them, it may not be enough time. If you're like in a multiplex, it makes a lot of sense. And it depends on how many days you are. With 20 features, I mean, that's a very intimate program. So, and you're doing a lot of walk-up business anyway, it sounded like. So I would still stagger. Yeah. So 3 days and within 5-minute walk. Yeah, I would definitely try and stagger stuff a little bit. The other thing is the 7 that do repeat, make sure that if you are going to put them up against something else, put them up against the same movie twice, right? So if you've got Godzilla playing and Spider-Man, and you get a repeat screening of Spider-Man and a repeat screening of Godzilla, play them at the same time. So one day I can go to Spider-Man and one day I can go to Godzilla. If I have Godzilla only once and Spider-Man twice, try to put something up against Spider-Man that plays twice. And then put them exactly the same time against each other, because the people who are interested in the first one will go to the second one. So if you want to see Spider-Man and Godzilla, you can go to both and not miss both. If you put it up against something else that they want to see and they're shut out of it twice because they had to make a hard choice, that becomes sort of weird. Josh is asking, do we have midnight screenings? Not really. I don't have an audience that supports those. My midnight screenings start at 10 and end at midnight. So I don't start shows at midnight. We're not in like a young, cool time. It's a bedroom community, and Sarasota was old people. So it wasn't really a midnight movie town. I've done it in the past with moderate success.
I think Hamptons too. I think our midnight screenings end at midnight.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to have an audience that loved like horror movies, and I was doing Butt-Numb-a-thon or Fantastic Fest, but I am unable because of my audience to do that.
Yeah. Do we have just a couple more minutes? Any other questions? But thank you guys for coming, and we are going to figure this out for Yeah, Josh gets a gold star for tweeting our webinar. So thank you, Josh.
What's the top 3 things every rush line should do? Josh is asking. Josh, why don't you just call me? And we'll talk about. No, I'm kidding. So I would say the top 3 things you should do are: number 1, honor your timeline commitment and keep people informed about their opportunity to get in. Number 2, make sure number 1 is, and number 2, make sure you're selling tickets to every screening via the rush line. And number 3, make it a pleasant experience for people so that they don't feel like they're waiting and then not getting into films, or if they don't get into films, like it's been an awful experience, places to sit, some sort of opportunity to be entertained or at least relax. Can I restate my answer? Yes, I'll say it again. Number 1, make sure that people.
He's kidding.
He's tweeting it. Okay, make sure people.
Oh, maybe he's not.
Yeah, make sure people get into the films so that the standby line gets utilized. It's very important. The most important thing is that the rush line gets used, and that's how you build it. Number 2, I think you have to honor your time commitments. So seat people when you say you're going to seat them. Give people good information about their opportunity to get into the movie. If you know you're only going to have 10 seats and there are 55 people on the line, tell 35 people they're probably not going to get in so they can make another choice. But be clear in your communication. Be consistent in your timing. And then the third thing is, I don't remember. Yeah, make them happy so that they don't have a crummy experience. Give them a place to sit. Give them a drink of water. Make sure that they don't feel like they're stuck there and it's a miserable experience for them.
And I want to reiterate something I said before, but about figuring out ways, if you're looking for things your sponsors can do, find ways to incorporate your sponsors into line management in general, not just rush lines, but anyone waiting in line. Do sampling, do other kinds of things to keep them entertained. Have volunteers there to talk about all the movies. If people know about the program, they can go and, does anyone have any questions about some of the movies coming up? I mean, there's ways to kind of keep the crowd entertained.
Yeah, the other thing we did, I didn't mention this, but we would announce films that are starting. So it's like, there are still tickets available for our 5 o'clock, people are in line for the 6 o'clock show. There's still tickets available for our 5 o'clock show, which is starting in the next few minutes. Please step inside if you'd like to go see yada yada. It's about this, that, and the other, starring so-and-so. Mm-hmm. And some people would leave the line and just go to a movie. So that's another thing you can do. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks to Chris for hosting in the background here. And thanks so much to Tom for doing this. And we look forward to hearing more from you guys. Please join our Facebook, join Twitter, join different things, and make sure you let us know what kind of ideas you have about future webinars. We're going to do them one a month, and we have the next 2 planned, but we're looking for ideas for the spring and summer. So thank you so much.
And
thanks everybody
for organizing this along with Chris and Tom. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, thanks, Jody. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Have a good day, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.